From CBS 4 News, this is Facing South Florida with Jim DeFede.
Welcome to Facing South Florida. I'm Jim DeFede, and we are less than 60 days until the midterm election. Last week I was in Sarasota and had a chance to sit down with State Senator Joe Gruters, the chairman of the Florida Republican Party. As you will see, he is feeling quite confident.
Well, I think on the Republican side, I think we're locked and loaded. I think we're going to win a lot of races. I think we're in the best position we've ever been, largely because of the leadership of our great governor, Ron DeSantis. I mean, I think around the country, people have rallied around him. Certainly here in the state, Republicans, independents, people want a fighter that's willing to stand up and go to bat for them, and that's exactly what he's done. He's kept the state open. He's kept us free. And the results speak for themselves. Look at voter registration. We went from a negative 350,000 voter registration deficit when the governor took office, and today we're, I think, 250,000 voters ahead. I mean, it's a monumental shift when you look at how those numbers have moved cycle by cycle.
And why do you think that shift occurred? How much of that was the work that the party put in, the Republican Party put in, versus how much neglect the Democratic Party at the same time did over the past 2 or 3 years? I mean, it takes two sometimes to make a swing that big.
Well, I will tell you that I think we're extremely fortunate because I think the Florida Democrat Party has been struggling over the last couple of years. And when you have a governor who's willing to invest and make the commitment to put that as a priority, he went out and raised a couple $1 million specifically to help us focus on voter registration.
One issue that we've talked about in the past is abortion. Democrats believe that that's a motivating factor for their candidates, that when you look at what's happened in Kansas, some of the special elections that have taken place in New York and other districts, that the turnout among Democrats on the issue of choice has made the difference in a lot of races. And the question is, do you think that that's going to be a factor here?
I don't think it's going to be a factor. I think the Democrats want to make it the primary issue of a campaign. But what we've seen here in Florida is common sense, reasonable legislation. Like last cycle, we moved it to a 15-week ban. And I think you don't hear any prominent elected official across the country coming out and saying they want anything else. I think they want to see how this law plays out. I think people are really concerned about kitchen table issues, the inflation, the high gas prices, being able to afford the housing, being able to make sure you send your kids to the best school possible. Those are the issues that are going to win the day, and that's why the governor wins out. Because don't forget, when the Democrats tried to lock everything down, try to shut kids out of school, it was the governor that stood up and said, "Hey, enough. We're going to keep these schools."
Wait a second. Let's not rewrite history entirely. I do seem to remember Governor DeSantis being the person who actually shut down the state. Did he not?
That was a temporary thing. I think it lasted a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks, but he put us back on the right track. In schools specifically, he told, because I will tell you, as a parent with 3 young kids, being able to juggle with my wife and I, we both work. It's very tough was juggling having the at-home school during that whole COVID pandemic. We were super worried that we weren't going to have the ability to send our kids back to school that allowed us both to go back to work. And it was the governor that came in and said, the schools are going to open up. They're going to open up, and that has made Florida be the best state in the country because everything revolves around that. If the parents have to stay home, it makes it so they can't work. It makes it there's nobody's working out in the workforce. It was shut down all these different states, and it's destroyed people's businesses all over the place. Here in Florida, we have a thriving economy. We have one of the best education systems in the country, and it is. The governor deserves a lot of credit over that.
Let's come back to that, but I want to stay with abortion for a second because we moved past it quickly because you said you don't hear any prominent elected officials talking about changing anything other than where the law is now, at 15 weeks. I think that's because nobody wants to say what the position will be before Election Day for fear of getting hit. Are you willing to say right now, committing, that you believe 100% the Florida legislature will not make any moves to lower it below 15 weeks next session?
That's a very broad question. I will say I'm only one member I don't think anything else will move this particular session.
Are you really saying that you don't believe that there's going to be new legislation to lower it to a fetal heartbeat bill, a 6-week bill, something more along like that line?
I think there may be some type of legislation push, but I highly doubt that anything gets passed in the next cycle. I would say in the next 2 years, I think it's probably going to be relatively calm, and we're going to let this law that play out, the one that we just passed.
But if I had asked that question to you a year ago, and I actually think I did ask you that question a year ago, you would have said the same thing about last session. You would have said that you didn't think that there was going to be an abortion issue raised in an election year, because I remember you and I talking, and you said the one issue that could upend the election is if we get too out there on abortion. And so you predicted that there would be no issues on abortion that would pass this last session. So it did. So your track record's not great on that.
Well, let me tell you, I want to first say I am pro-life. I would support any type of heartbeat bill that came along. I just don't think that the majority of my colleagues would go ahead and support a bill that would limit it any more than what it is right now, at least for the foreseeable future. And I think that Kathleen Passidomo, our incoming Senate president, I think she talked about this issue while she visited me, while she was talking about an event here in my hometown community. I think it's going to be tough to pass any other type of legislation at this point. I'm not saying it won't happen in the future, but I think that my colleagues are happy with the status quo as it is right now.
See, that gets to a really interesting question, and you made reference to it earlier with regard to the governor, and I think it's fascinating to me that the legislature has its views of things. Like if you had asked about redistricting, the legislature, the Senate had its own plan when it came to redistricting, whether it was on the so-called Don't Say Gay bill, the parental rights bill, abortion, all of these things the Senate is usually a little bit more moderate on. And yet what we found was when the governor says, no, I want this, suddenly everyone jumps in line. What's to prevent the governor from suddenly deciding after he's reelected, after he's safely reelected, I want a heartbeat bill?
Because I think he would have been championing that before, and I've never seen him champion specifically the heartbeat bill. I think he champions the life cause. I think that Florida's in such a great place. I think we got a lot of members. I think the governor, he's level-headed. I think we want to do the right thing for the state. And listen, at the end of the day, I think, like I said, I'm as pro-life as they come from the moment you're born to natural death. However, I think it would take a Herculean effort, I believe, to pass additional abortion legislation this cycle. I'm not saying it's not going to be proposed, but I just don't anticipate anything else further happening.
How fearful are Florida legislators, senators, House members, yourself, of the governor? Because he wields a big stick.
He wields a big stick, but that's why people love him, because the guy is willing to fight in the face of adversity, into the face of criticism. Most politicians go up to Tallahassee, get elected, and they wave the white flag the minute there's a danger zone. This guy has literally led the fight on all these issues. You're right. He's not willing to back down. He says he wants to do what he thinks is right all the time. And that's why his poll numbers are off the charts. That's why he has $130 million in the bank. People love this guy because of the leadership that he shows and the backbone that he has and his willingness to step up to the plate over and over again. I will tell you that at least I've been in the legislature for 6 years, and we passed more conservative bills in the last 2 years.
Can you identify one serious piece of legislation, one serious thing that the governor wanted that the legislature said, nope, that's too much?
I think that he was really, I think there were several bills that maybe not him himself got necessarily involved with, but I think maybe his overall staff. I think one of those bills was the paycheck bill for the unions. I think that he wanted to see some type of reform there. That never moved. It may have moved in the House, not in the Senate. I think it was one of those things at the end. But at the end of the day, what happens is the reason why we're so successful here in Florida is you have, yes, the House, the Senate, and the governor. They all have to agree to make something law at the end of the day. And I think what they've done is they've had an open communication. You've had strong conservative leaders, and as a result, a lot of these issues get, settled, and we come to an agreement.
Usually, so they may not. But usually the agreement is, okay, governor, we'll give you what you want, isn't it?
I would say that not necessarily he gets what he wants, but it may not be in the version that he wants. I would say that that's why you have the process.
Redistricting, he got what he
debating.
wanted.
Redistricting, there's no question. Listen, I'm glad he made that fight. As a senator, you know, the question that people always ask me, well, why didn't you fight the maps? People have to understand the process that the Senate went through a couple years ago when all the maps were thrown out. I didn't really play a process. The only role that I had in redistricting was voting for what our redistricting chairman said was constitutionally the sufficient map, and so I voted yes. And when he came on when it was vetoed, the governor's map came in. That chairman, Ray Rodriguez, incredible, incredible human being, super nice guy, incredibly smart. The question was asked, are these maps constitutional? He said yes. We voted yes, and it was it. But at the end of the day, we're going to probably pick up 3 seats as a result.
Right. You're going to pick up 3 seats, but you're also going to have the public perception, the public belief that the way you got that was by eliminating 2 African-American access districts. So you're going to cut African-American representation from the congressional delegation as a result of giving the governor what he wanted. Under the maps you initially voted for, that was not the case. The governor said, that's not good enough for me, I want this. He got it, and now we're going to have 2 fewer African Americans in Congress.
What the governor said was that map was not constitutional. Based on what the Supreme Court said 6 years ago or whenever those cases were, he said based on the criteria that the Senate used, that map was not constitutional. You couldn't use some of these things, so that's why he developed his own map and it passed.
So was the original map that you voted on, that Ray Rodriguez, who you respect, said was constitutional, the original map that would have kept those African American seats? Do you sit here now believing that that it was an unconstitutional thing you voted for?
No, I still think that the map was constitutional. I think the governor's map was constitutional, and I think by the end of the day, the governor made his point. He won, and listen, I will tell you, putting on my party hat, I'm glad that the governor made that fight, because in our quest to get rid of Nancy Pelosi as Speaker of the House, the United States House, we are making a difference here in Florida. And you know why? Only